Good morning, everyone. Welcome. My name is Menachem Creditor. It's my honor to serve as scholar in residence and rabbi for UJA Federation of New York. We bring you Torah and music, blessing, and community every weekday. We've been doing so since March 18th, 2020. Today it is August 11th, 2026. That is 6.5 years of Torah every single weekday morning, with friends from all over the world who know that when they show up, there will be someone else there to say hello, like Kathleen and Karen and Adrian and Jonathan, Linda, Amy, and Judy. Boker Tov. Hi, Scott. Natan, nice to see you. Jonathan, nice to see you too. Arlene, Yoram, Carl, and Jack. Barry, Boker Tov. Good to see everybody. Hope that you and yours are safe and well. Ronnie sending love to the Berkshires. Yoram sending love to Frankfurt. It's good to see everyone. Let's give a moment to see who else is here. Barbara, Susie, and Amy. Deborah, nice to see you. Arlene, yes, I am, thank God, in my UJA office, which makes me so happy. Fran and Jerry, Marion and Linda, nice to see you too. Hi, Sherry. All right. Hi, Cecile. Let's take a breath, sing a bracha, learn some Torah. Here we go. So good morning, everyone. It's good to see all of you. Hope that you and yours are safe and well. This is broadcast 1610 of our morning Torah community. What a gift. Some of you saw that just yesterday I shared on social media that 6 years ago yesterday was broadcast 100. And Kim, you're here. Good. I was going to talk about you. When 6 years ago yesterday we were about to reach the 100th broadcast, there was a knock on my door, and suddenly there was a balloon bouquet with the number 100 and a Jewish star floating right in front of my front door. That was in the background of my broadcast that day, which was August 10th, 2020. Here we are, Kim. Look at what we have. Look at our friends all around us in the Torah we get to learn. Thank you for your support all of these years, your friendship, and everyone for being part of this wonderful community that has spanned years and continents. So, broadcast 1610, all these years later. Let's get right into it. We are in a Torah portion that we desperately need. So let's make sure that we pay close attention. The Torah portion is called Shoftim, which means judges. And the opening verse might be familiar to you. I want to read it in the Hebrew and then the English. This is chapter 16, verse 18. The Hebrew is Shoftim v'shotrim titen lecha b'chol sha'arecha asher Adonai Elohecha noten lecha lishvatecha v'shavtu et ha'am mishpat tzedek. Here is the translation by the Bible scholar Everett Fox. Judges and officials are you to provide for yourselves within all your gates that God, your God, is giving you, for your tribal districts. They are to judge the people with equitable justice. And among the things that are important for us to understand here is that the Torah is envisioning, Moses in his final speech is envisioning who and what we will be when we reach the promised land. He's giving us what we might consider an ethical will. And it is important for us to understand that that ethical will is born within his awareness that he will not be there himself when we make it into the promised land. And what a thing for us to remember that the greatest gift of a leader is to cast a vision that is bigger than the self, that will last far beyond what that leader themselves will experience. And among the things that Moses prioritizes here is what we just read. We must have judges whose job it is to judge justly. We'll talk about that later this week. And we must have what we call legal enforcers, police. Officials is Everett Fox's word. Shoftim v'shotrim, and in fact, Shoftim are the words for judges in modern Hebrew, and shotrim are the words for legal enforcement. And the Gemara asks a very simple question. The Talmud asks a very simple question, which is, if you have judges, why do you need enforcers? The judges will determine what the law is. And the answer is a very common sense answer for all of us, which is just because you have law on the books doesn't mean you have law lived in community on the streets, because people are tempted, if they believe no one is watching, to break the law. Temptation is everywhere, certainly when people have power, and certainly when they don't. So it is part of the Torah's vision that we should have just law and enforced practice of that law for the sake of community. What we have also in our Parsha, and this is one of the hidden parts of it, is a juxtaposition. Often you can learn what the Torah might mean by seeing the verses that are adjacent to the original verse. Well, here we have one about legal enforcement, law and legal enforcement. And just a few verses later, I'm skipping some crucial ones, some of you know, but just a few verses later is a law, and this is 4 verses later, verse 21. Lo tita lecha asherah kol eitz al mizbach Adonai Elohecha asher ta'aseh lach. Don't plant yourself in Asherah, which is an idol worship tree, or any tree structure beyond the altar of God that you make for yourself. And one of the interesting things is there is a debate in Jewish law over the centuries whether or not trees can be planted outside or in the courtyards of synagogues. Anyone who's been involved in the architecture of a synagogue knows that landscape architecture is often part of the project, and every shul that I can think of that takes its presence and the beauty of its presence seriously has trees. But there are those like Maimonides who believe that just as there weren't supposed to be trees planted anywhere around the temple in Jerusalem, so too in the temples, the local Mikdash Ma'at, the places where we build synagogues. I'll leave behind the debate except to say that the reason most legal decisors believe that trees shouldn't be planted in by the temple in Jerusalem is because the temple itself is as beautiful as anything and needs no adornment. And we should be proud of that idea, that a place of Jewish worship is its own beauty. But we should also recognize that the natural world is not meant to be a distraction from the holy, but meant to be incorporated into our notion of the holy. Regardless of that debate, which is a fun tangent to be on, we are taught verses after the idea of judges and legal enforcers that we should not have an idol worship tree planted next to the altar. And I want to read you just one small quote from the Talmud. This is from Masechet Sanhedrin, the Tractate of Sanhedrin, page 7b. Anyone who appoints over a community a judge who is unfit is as though they have planted a tree as part of Asherah, an idol worship among the Jewish people, because juxtaposed we have these verses. Ravashi says, as a continuation of that idea, and in a place where there are Torah scholars, it is as though they planted the tree next to the altar, because the Torah scholars are the right kind of tree to be planted. So you can see the diversity of opinion there in the Talmud. It's worth more exploration. It's a very dense teaching. But I want to share this because of the combination of those ideas and our moment. We can see sometimes that the law as it is established renders some inequity more stable than it should. Tax codes and arrest records, all sorts of things, are ways of us adjudicating whether or not the laws that we have as we have them are sufficient for society. But how important it is for us to understand, take seriously, and hear tradition's voice in our ears, which is to say, advocacy so that we make sure that our judges judge justly. That's part of the command here. And that enforcement is done appropriately. That is part of the command here. That all needs to be integrated into our consciousness. So too must we understand that if we get that wrong, it's as if we are worshiping an idol, abandoning God's vision for society. This is a way of us understanding something very deep about Jewish consciousness, Torah, and what it is to live a traditional life. There are those who think that tradition, Jewish tradition, has nothing to say about the public sphere, and that rabbis or other scholars who get involved in politics are doing so against what Torah represents. How important for us to recognize that the Torah's perspective is that the world and the streets matter, that we are called to take into account what judging justly looks like. Because if we do not, we are abandoning what God wants for this world. We cannot have an internal conversation entirely and say that we are living out Torah values. We have to recognize that our recognition and our relationship with the Holy One requires us to look beyond the walls of a synagogue. It's not just trees in the courtyard of a synagogue that matter. It's the people walking on the sidewalk right next to it, the people who, God forbid, are living on the streets, 2 streets away. Our work must recognize, our Jewish vision must incorporate what we typically call ritual and what we typically call ethical. Those 2 things for the Torah are one. And Moses knew in his last day that we had to take this seriously. That supporting the structures that exist, meaning there should be justices and there should be legal enforcers, that's a Jewish commitment. The order that society requires is a Jewish commitment. We always make it a point to thank security and the police that partner with us when we gather. How important for us to understand that that is a ritual obligation, not just a pragmatic act. We are told to establish such things and to make sure that they follow appropriate guidelines for the sake of an equitable society. So too must we understand that if we get that wrong, if we allow justice to be employed in a way that is not just, we also violate what is interior to a Jewish experience, God and God's vision. There are many, many ways for us to understand this. There's no fundamentalism in this argument. It is an argument for Jewish engagement in the world with the authority of the Torah. It doesn't mean one policy has the authority of the Torah, but it means engagement is a mitzvah. Civic engagement is a mitzvah. What a powerful thing for us to take seriously. What an important lesson for us to learn well. And what important considerations for us as we go about our lives as citizens of the world, parts of building local society. Not something simple. Yes, something important. May we be blessed to be part of this great wrestling for the sake of society. Let's send our hearts to the east. Let's sing. Kol baleva penima nefesh Yehudi homia ulefate mizrach kadima ayin letzion tzofia od lo avda tikvatenu התקווה בת שנות 2000 להיות עם חופשי בארצנו ארץ ציון וירושלים להיות עם חופשי בארצנו ארץ ציון וירושלים. Am Yisrael Chai. See you tomorrow, my friends.